Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the DucksNPucks podcast. This is the number one home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
Welcome to the show. This is your host, Mike Walters, on my co-host, Eddie Richard, and we have tons of things to discuss. The breaking news of head coach Greg Cronin being fired. We also have the season recap that we recorded already, but now we're redoing it due to technical difficulties. So, we tried to do this a few times, but third time the charm. We're going to discuss the Cronin stuff, look at a lot of the stats during the season, see how that played in there. Also kind of talk about Verbeek's comments or lack thereof about the firing, kind of weird, and some injury news and some rumor stuff. So we'll dive through it. It'll be a big old monster show. Get you guys all caught up on our thoughts on the season and on the firing of Cronin. So with that, Eddie, I don't know where to start. I guess our usual. What are you drinking?
Yes, we deviated from the plan last show and everything just went to hell. But I have my trusty Pink Whitney next to me, so that's actually doing well for me right now. A much needed drink. How about you, Mike? What are you drinking?
I am doing same thing. My Red Bull vodka. I decided to do that. I know when we recorded our first time around, I did not have anything to drink, so maybe that kind of screwed it up too. But this time around, yes.
The podcast gods were mad at us, so we had to say sorry to them and kind of never deviate from our original intros again.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, so we
well, before that,
yeah.
Mike, what have you been up to? Because I forgot to ask you that question last time, too. Since our last show.
That's true. Honestly, not a whole lot. Was working a lot. I was actually planning to go out of town this weekend, and my better half couldn't get some of the days off, so I ended up not working out, or I guess it did work out, because now we're able to get the show done, because I wouldn't have been able to fix it. I would have been out of town without my my microphone and all my other stuff. So nothing really big lately, just kind of laying low for now, but I'm looking to try and plan some trips later in the summer, obviously with the free time, with, of course, the Ducks not being in the playoffs. What about you?
I went to South Dakota. That was really fun. Went with my buddy. Had a good time. Saw Mount Rushmore and had a little layover in Denver, so it was cool to be on my DraftKings app to make some bets, which I lost all of them, as usual, typical me. And got first class on the way back, so we got free drinks, a lot of free drinks, and came back here and just kind of enjoyed my time leaving the state for a little bit.
That's good, and it's always good to get away and get a break. That's always a huge thing that I'm a big advocate of, and I will be doing the same in the near future for sure. Someone else that's getting a break. I don't know if he really wanted the break, but head coach Greg Cronin now has a break this summer. The Ducks announced that he was fired on Saturday morning, and I don't know where to even start with this. We we were kind of, I guess, both surprised. I was kind of originally planning to post the original version of this podcast, and then the news came out, and I was like, oh, okay, so let's work on this again. But very, very interesting. The news came out, first thing Saturday morning, and then I don't know. I think you and I didn't think it was going to happen. We thought maybe it would be something next season. We talk about the stats for this team, and the Ducks did do better overall this season. They ended up 35, 37, and 10, which is a couple games below an NHL 500. If NHL 500, we're not necessarily counting the overtime shootout losses, but they went up by 21 points there. And, they scored more goals this season. They scored 217. Last year they had scored 203. They had given up 293 last year, and this season cut it down to 261. Still not a good goal differential, but they did cut that gap in half. But it was interesting because when they did talk to Verbeek later in the day over this, he said that it wasn't really the record. It wasn't the special teams, which, the power play was the worst in the league. Just kind of interesting comments. He talked about what he didn't factor in, or maybe weighed less, but he never gave a specific reason. He just said that he talked to Cronin privately about some things and wanted to keep them private. So I thought that was very interesting. But What did you think, Eddie, when the news came out in the morning and all this stuff? I mean, it just, to me, I was just kind of like, I was shocked. I didn't think it would happen. At least now, you and I talked about him, not being the long term coach, but kind of the way the season went, I thought maybe he would at least carry him over to the next season and then see how it would go.
Yeah, it was kind of shocking. Just all of a sudden, just you had your player interviews and you kind of cut them short, and all of a sudden this morning you wake up and like, okay, you're fired. I don't know if they had an internal meeting this morning, if they had something going on yesterday, he wanted to ponder on it and think about it. But yeah, it was kind of a shock, especially the Ducks social media page was posting about, how we had a better season and blah blah blah, and kind of Verbeek's comments too the other day saying how the Ducks weren't officially eliminated till like 6 or 7 games into April. So I thought it was gearing for, okay, well, Cronin deserves to be back. So I don't know what happened internally, what Verbeek saw, or what the players had to say, or anything like that. Or a factor too, I want to throw out there, kind of similar to what the St. Louis Blues did when Boston Bruins fired Jim Montgomery. They fired their coach to hire him. The New York Rangers, they announced that Peter Laviolette got fired as well. Now these GMs, they talk a lot. They know what's going on before the public, before Bob McKenzie's, before all those analysts. So I'm pretty sure that Verbeek and a lot of the GMs had wind that Chris Drury was going to go ahead and fire Laviolette. So I don't know if Cronin is kind of seeing other coaches that are going to be on the hot seat and going to be fired, and he wants to kind of take a stab at them and kind of get a more established and experienced coach that knows how to win, that knows how to kind of be more of a player's coach than a hard ass. So you get to kind of baby these new hockey players now. So I think maybe that played a factor in it, because it just doesn't make sense. You just all of a sudden you just fire them just out of nowhere. That doesn't make sense to me unless there was some other alternative plan that you're planning.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, and we can talk about some of the coaches that are out there right now and whatnot. I think part of it too, and we've talked about this throughout the whole season, how we did not think that Cronin could get the Ducks to the next level. And I think that was part of it, whether Verbeek wants to admit that part or not. He did say in his initial statement in the morning when the firing happened that he had been looking at this, thinking about it for several weeks, which is kind of interesting to me. But then, he doesn't give an exact answer as to why he did fire him. But for me, I mean, it is the play of the team on the ice. I mean, they did do better overall, as we talked about, scoring more goals, giving up less goals, being better overall season record. But once you dive into the statistics and stuff, you see that their special teams was still terrible. The penalty kill stayed right around the same where it was last year. It was 74% this year, was 72% the year before. As we mentioned, the penalty kill is last in the league, 11.8. Overall, some of their puck possession numbers went up with the Corsi 4 and Fenwick 4 numbers, and even expected goals 4. All those numbers went up in all situations. But once you dive into the even strength play, it was really, really not good for the Ducks. Again, I mean, they weren't great last year, but they went down in almost every category. In Corsi 4, Fenwick 4, they went down. Their expected goals percentage went down. It did go up, the actual expected goals for to 161 from 142 from last year, but then the expected goals against went up to 195.95, and it was 167.67 last year. So I mean, defensively, there you can see that there's some concern and some issues there. And then the Ducks goalies did extremely well this season with their goals saved against expected. You had Dostal 22 plus and Gibson at 11 plus, where they were respectively 2 and 1 plus last year. So they were 30 plus in saving goals against. So the goalies really masked, I think, a lot of this season for the Ducks' poor play on special teams and on 5-on-5. So I still think, even though he's saying, it wasn't necessarily the win-loss record or special teams, I still think some of that had to factor in there, because I know he had talked about the 5-on-5 and thought they were a little bit better, but the stats don't really tell you that they were better 5-on-5. That didn't pan out. But I think that he was not the guy that was going to carry this team farther. He had one more year on the contract. So if he felt like he wasn't going to get the Ducks where they want to be next year, because he's talking about the playoffs and this press conference thing that he did shortly after announcing the firing, that's kind of the part of it that I'm looking at as well. Maybe it's the overall thing like that. The other part he did mention too is he said it was nothing about the culture. So I thought that was interesting because, we talked about that in all of those reports throughout the season of the stuff that happened, 20 years ago or however long ago it was. So, he did mention that and said it wasn't that. So to me, it does have to be the performance on the ice. It does have to be the fact that that he doesn't think that he can get him to the next level. And then the other part, you mentioned the player exit interviews. Elliot Freeman did talk about that on his 32 Thoughts podcast, his recent one, which was recorded before the firing. But that's what I'm curious about, because the management of the players, I thought, was an issue. We talked about the blue line with Hellison, Minty, and Zelli getting rotated, and they traded Fowler and got Trouba, and those kind of issues. And then even down the stretch of the season, you had Washi and Moore that were added to the team in these final meaningless games in terms of making the playoffs, and then those guys didn't play a lot of time. So that's another part. I'm wondering if that was a big factor, that he didn't mention the utilization of the lineup and the players and things like that. So, just kind of trying to read between the lines of some of that. And I mean, obviously we may find out more after we record this show. There'll be more player interviews, and, stuff always comes out later on, right? But just first glance, first issue of seeing this, those are kind of the things that I'm just throwing out there, Eddie, that I'm looking into, because I'm trying to read between what, he said that these certain things weren't necessarily the issue, but then he didn't mention these other things. So those are the big things to me, is besides looking at the stats that you and I have talked about and how that affected it, if you look outside of it, I still look at the usage of the lineup and just trying to get them to this next point to make the playoffs. I don't think he thinks he can get him there, and maybe that just alone is the reason why he's gone. Any thoughts on that?
No, you're right. Another thing too, and like you said, a good point that you did make. The truth will come out eventually. Someone's going to spit off and say something. It's going to be leaked somewhere. So we're going to know the exact truth. It could have been a situation too. You mentioned Cronin had one more year left on his contract. That they both had their exit interviews, and Cronin was trying to talk about a contract extension, and Verbeek just let him know, hey, look, I don't have plans for you for the future. And right then and there, once a coach asks for a contract extension and the GM tells him no, that he's not part of the future, at that time you have to cut ties. There's no going back on that. You can't kind of backtrack, or you can't just linger around and kind of state that, yeah, well, we'll work on your contract, or we'll see what's happening. It's just all that says that you're not going to get that contract extension. So I don't know if it was something like that, and they kind of both agreed, or Cronin didn't want to coach anymore without that kind of cushion with an extension, and Verbeek just finally said, hey, well, I guess it's best we cut ties and we just find someone else that wants to be, or that can get us to that next level and be here long term if Cronin wasn't.
Yeah, which is interesting too, because Verbeek said that Cronin was shocked when he found out the news, and that kind of surprised me too a little bit. Maybe because, I mean, Verbeek did have some good things to say about Cronin, because you remember he talked about last year, and he had to talk to him, tell him like tone it down in the summertime. Obviously you had the stuff that I do look back on as I look at those comments from like Lyubushkin and things like that. Last year, and then he had to tweak some stuff this year. So I'm thinking maybe he tweaked enough to get a better record, like we said, and they improved in some stats, but not enough. Obviously, like we were talking about, the special teams went down. That's where I also think Verbeek said that there was no changes in the assistant coaching staff right now, where I think Clune needs to go, because the power play was a freaking disaster. So I mean, if you're going to boot Cronin, you need to boot him. But maybe he gave him the second year of the contract to kind of straighten things out and get better, and he improved, but he didn't improve enough. And then, like you said, if he's going into the third year of the contract and he knows he's not going to extend him for that fourth year or however many years after that, then what's the point? What's the point of bringing him back and he's not quite getting you where you want to be? And to me, I think a lot of it's the lineup utilization. We also had the whole issue with Zegras at wing and center. And what are we doing there? Well, why are we not playing him at center? We're playing him at wing. And then the lineup too, trying to get the right line combinations with the players. And I think some of it developed but kind of too late later in the season. And there's some positive stuff too with this team. We will talk about that. It's not all gloom and doom. I think obviously a lot of it's going to hinge on who they're going to get as another coach. And that's a huge issue going into this is, what do they do? You had Dallas Aikens, a guy that had a little bit of time in the NHL. You brought him up from the Gulls. Didn't work out. You brought in Cronin that had no experience at the NHL. And so what do? Do you bring in a coach with no experience? Again, David Carl's name's out there. I saw some reports that, after the Peter Laviolette filing that the Rangers might be in on him. There may be some other teams in on him. Or do you try to look for a coach that's been there? Do you look for Gerard Gallant? Do you look for a Paul Maurice? Those kind of guys, or do you go for the recycle? Which I'm not a fan of recycles, but there's Bruce Boudreau's name being thrown out there. So it's kind of like you have three options. You go for a coach that has no NHL experience, one that does have NHL experience, and or one that was a repeat with the Ducks, which I'm not on board with that. I love Bruce Boudreau, but I just don't. We did the Carlisle thing. I just don't want to repeat. So that's the big thing. We'll find out eventually the truth about what happened with this firing. I do think it's looking long term, and I do think it's player utilization. And I do think, even though Verbeek says it's not necessarily the special teams and things like that, I do think it is. I think some of that is a problem. I mean, he could have fired Clune and kept Cronin, which is kind of what I thought he might do, and then instead he just booted Cronin. So I mean, good for him though. We're just kind of speculating this, but if he felt that Cronin could not get him to the next level, which you and I had talked about repeatedly, then yeah, why hang out for another year? Just cut ties and let's start the search. And if there's some other people that he had talked to, they heard some other people might be available. Maybe that's why he didn't do it during the season. Maybe that's why he waited till after the season, just again to start fresh. So I think this is a big moment. We did talk on the show about the free agency coming up being a huge thing for the Ducks. But honestly, Eddie, I think this is a huge moment too for Verbeek, because if you're saying that you kind of made a mistake with this, but now you got to go get another coach. So what happens? You get another coach, and then that one doesn't work out. Then at what point is that Verbeek's fault? So I mean, he said he's going to do a big, long, wide search too. That's what he said in his press conference. So I'm really curious to see who he's going to pick. And if that person doesn't work out, I'm really curious to see what the owners are going to do then, Eddie.
With their owners, our owners are kind of soft, like the Ducks on the ice this season. Seems like it seems like they don't want to fire anyone. They kind of stand back from all that stuff, which they shouldn't. Should be a little more hands-on, not just own a team because you say you want to own one. If it doesn't work out, and I mentioned this on a previous show, then maybe it's time to do an owner change. Maybe it's time for them to give up the Ducks to someone that actually can make this team competitive, to throw more little hands-on by ownership and get something done with this team. Because like, how many years are we going to hope that this whole song and dance, like Verbeek's comments today, I just thought they were bullshit. I thought it was just all words and no actions. It reminded me of Bob Murray again and his promise to always get us to that point. And I'm tired of hearing that shit. it just goes out of my one ear and out the other. It's enough. We don't want to hear anything. I'd rather hear you not say a damn thing and come on, say, hey, well, I'm going to show you by my actions on what I want to do with this team and where I want to get, instead of hearing all this blah, blah, blah bull crap. But, yeah, you did mention, too, about the coach search, about David Carl. That's a good one. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in him. Now, is he going to want to leave Denver? He grew up, he went to school there. He had a scholarship to go there. He had to retire from professional hockey due to a medical reason and for his health. Denver still honored his scholarship, and they allowed him to be part of the team as an assistant coach. So that was good on them. He ends up leaving after he graduated. He comes back. He works under Jim Montgomery, I believe. That was the head coach of Denver. And then he takes over the spot, and he's been there ever since. I think that kind of loyalty that the school showed you by still giving you a scholarship for playing hockey, even though you weren't playing hockey because you retired. And I think it goes a long way. I think he's settled there. He has a winning brand, a winning organization. He gets players that you don't really have to kind of go and scout them or convince them to come to Denver. are you going to want to just drop all that, move your family around, and come to a team like the Ducks, to the Blackhawks, or the Sharks, to the Rangers? Kind of like the Rangers is a different story, but the kind of bottom feeder teams that are looking for head coaches. He's not going to get a Tampa Bay, a Florida, a Vegas, unless he wants to move on as an assistant coach. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if he wants to make that jump, or he's content where he's at, where he doesn't have to worry about getting fired and having to move around and having those stressors as a brand new first-year coach. He might be just content just developing players and watching them grow. And I'm pretty sure he gets a hell of a good money too, coaching in college. But yeah, that was one that was interesting that you did point out. You mentioned Bruce Boudreau too. I wouldn't mind him coming back to the Ducks as a special teams coach. Well, we've seen this happen before where a head coach took a different position. I know Paul Maurice has done it. I can't recall the exact team that he came back to, but he went and was an assistant coach with one of those teams after being a head coach somewhere else. So it's not really a downfall. It's a little less responsibility. He can probably revamp the power play. I mean, you could pull someone from Honda Center, one of the fans, and they could probably do a better job at coaching the power play than what we've seen this season. So, yeah, I wanted to throw out too, Mike Sullivan. Mike and Mike Sullivan, see, it works out perfect. From the Pittsburgh Penguins. He did coach USA at the Four Nations. I'm not sure if he's going to want to stay and kind of be like in that rebuilding phase where the Pittsburgh Penguins are going. And Kyle Dubas, too, being the second-year GM over there at the Pittsburgh Penguins, I'm pretty sure he wants to bring in his own guy. He just kind of inherited that coach. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But if he's available and they let him go or they decide to part ways, I would like the Ducks to go over there and try to get him. And I think he'd do a good job with the good balance of our veteran players to our lower skilled players and our rookie players and our young players, too. I think that would be a good fit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of names out there like you talked about. I wouldn't be opposed to Sullivan. Jay Woodcroft was another one that was thrown out there. Rick Tocchet. Some of these other ones that may be fired soon. Some that are available. You brought up an interesting point about Boudreau as an assistant coach. Trying to work the power play. That's where I joke and I was like, hey, we should bring back Teemu. Teemu could work the power play. I mean, because he doesn't want to be a head coach, but. We've talked about Getzlaf, which, he's doing his stuff with, the NHL player safety. So I don't know if he would be one that's interested or even thinking about it now that he's in Nashville. But I guess the other option we didn't discuss is if you wanted a player coach to come back, like, would you want somebody like that? If none of these guys, if they all said, screw it, like you said, Eddie, is there a certain one that would come back? I mean, I think, we talked about this on the pre-recording that we did before. I thought Niedermeyer would be one. I don't know if he'd want to do it because I know the family stuff, but he's kind of a guy I look at that if he wanted to be the head coach, or maybe you do bring him back for special teams. But is there anybody, like, player-wise that you could see being an assistant or head coach that could help this team going forward?
I think Niedermeyer was a perfect one. When we spoke about that on our technical difficulties show, you did mention Niedermeyer, and I could just see a good fit, especially how kind of mild-mannered and calm he is, how he reads the game. I think he'd be an excellent addition, and he can help develop, especially our defensemen, but I think the whole team in general. He'd be the kind of coach to make the team around him better, just like he did as a player, making everyone around him better. So that'd be a good one. I'm not too opposed of kind of players turn coach. It's working out great for Marty St. Louis over there in Montreal. I think it worked out great. There's some players that just have a knack for it. Obviously, Andrew Burnett over there in Nashville, that's not really working out. We're not sure if he's going to be fired, but you can't really judge one coach by one of the teams that they're playing. Another team can go out, or they can be bad on one team and then kind of just have a different dynamic on the other. So, yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to a kind of a player coach, but I can't really think of off top of my head any other former players that retired that are coaching that would coach. There's I think Ryan Kessler coaches his kids team, but yeah, I wouldn't. I mean, I at this point I wouldn't. I'd take a gorilla in a monkey suit and a hat with a cigar coaching if it means we're gonna get some wins and get to the playoffs, because whatever we've been doing hasn't been working and it's just getting frustrating every single year. Oh, maybe next year. Oh, we're gonna do a playoff team, or this is our year, or we're gonna compete, and then nothing happens. We're just still false hope, false motivations. Like, no, just do what the Rangers did. If you come next October, by November, December, and this team's not performing, just go out and just let your fans know and be honest, open. Like, hey, this team's not gonna do anything. We're gonna start selling off pieces and trying to get something going, like the Rangers did. Surprisingly, a few years now, I think 2 months into the season, they went and sent a letter out to all their fans saying that, hey, they're shutting it down. It's not working, and what they did is not going to work, and they want to just kind of build up from scratch. And obviously, this season didn't work, but they went from back-to-back 100-point season and winning the President's Trophy the last few seasons. So I don't know. I know it's frustrating to hear as a fan, but I'm just tired of this kind of false hope each and every year.
Yeah, and just kind of close out this whole little part that we're talking about. And we will talk about some of the good things that did happen this season. But yeah, I feel like it's a big moment for Verbeek. So whoever he's going to pick and the moves that we do this summer, it's going to be very, very huge. And it's not going to be a quiet summer for sure. We're going to definitely have a lot of stuff to talk about in the podcast. I was talking to Jesse a little bit today, and he was talking about how we were going to shut down the podcast till September. And I said, no, Old City Sports, Ducks and Pucks, we're going to be rolling. We're going to probably have stuff going more and more as all these things, come and go with the off season of what's going to happen. Like I said, I do applaud Verbeek for pulling the trigger. I didn't think he was going to do it, as we said, and so he did. But and as I mentioned, we're part of the Old City Sports Network. Check out the different sponsors in the description box. Usually OCSN is the code to use for all the discounts, so they're all listed in there, and you can check them out. We answered a bunch of those fan questions. From Luann Sin asked about the Ducks cleaning up the coaching stuff. We had people asking about Cronin, so we all talked about that. But, it wasn't all bad this season. Some of the good things, we had Anaheim Ducks Cards on Instagram ask us, what did we think about players that stuck out this season? And I did mention it a little bit, but, the goaltending stuff for the Ducks was very, very good. Dostal and Gibson with those goals saved against expected was very, very high and much better this year than last year. And really, I think was a lot of the reason why the Ducks had success this year. So I think both of them were great, and we'll dive a little bit into Gibson in a minute with some news too. But I thought that was huge. I think Lacombe was a big one that kind of surprised everybody. To me, he's the number one defenseman now. So I thought that was a huge one too. What did you think, Eddie? What were some of the individual players that at least stood out this season and made some strides for the team?
I think second half McTavish really turned it on. We had no idea what was going on the first half of the season. We even speculated that he might be playing through an injury. And then it seemed like, I want to say after the Four Nations tournament, he came and just went completely crazy. Just like second half Leo Carlsson after that Four Nations. And I mentioned that too, so I was kind of right about that, saying that him, even though he didn't play too much at Four Nations, he still was around that. He was still around kind of a more competitive players and got to learn from some of the best fellow countrymen. He came back with just a chip on his shoulder. He went over there and really kicked ass for the rest of the season, and we got to see what the really potential he can really get. So those things surprised me. But yeah, I want to say, and I agree with you, the biggest surprise was Jackson Lacombe. He just, after the Fowler trade and he got that more opportunity to step up, he just ran with it and didn't stop. Like, it's crazy how I picked him up in one of my fantasy leagues and it paid dividends. He was just every day getting points, getting hits, getting in the mix. I like that. I like what I saw. And he was a really big surprise for the Ducks, and I think he's number one. I think he's not going to stop. I think next year he's going to even have a better year, and even, I want to say, even more of a breakout year than he had this season, especially coming up on his contract year. And I always mention how players are going into their contract year, they play with an extra chip on their shoulder. What kind of, and it's not to their fault, kind of didn't impress me this season with Minty and Zellweger, but it's not their fault. They didn't get that consistency. Cronin was just shuffling up out of the lineup, in and out, and that wasn't fair to them in their development. Like I mentioned too, drop them down to the AHL, let them play over there if you're not going to let them play each and every night to develop them. Once they started getting consistent minutes, though, they started playing a little bit better and getting some of those points and kind of finding their game. But I think the biggest one we can just talk about is, and keep talking about, is Jackson Lacombe.
Yeah, absolutely. He did phenomenal this season. Was fantastic. And, some of the other things that we talked about, we had some predictions, too, in the beginning of the season. And some of the things like did work out in our favor. Some of the things we predicted. We had talked about the Ducks with the goal scoring. They scored 14 more goals this year than last year. I know it's not a huge jump, but we talked about the Ducks having 20 goal scorers on the team. And, we thought that they could have had the potential to have, 5 or 6 guys score 20 goals, and they had 5 guys do it. You had McTavish lead the way with 22, Terry and Vetrano with 21, Carlson and Gauthier with 20, and then Kaloran with 19. So you did have some balanced scoring, and you had guys getting in the 20-goal ranges. So that was one thing that we talked about that was a positive. We also talked about the Ducks trying to finish around 500, the NHL 500 as we call it, and they did. They were just basically a game short. If they would have won more game in regulation as opposed to lost, then they would have had that NHL 500 record. So, and then the other part too, we talked about the goalies. We said that Dostal should take over and be the number one guy, and he was. He played in 54 games, and Gibson played in 29, so it was almost doubled there. And both of them were a huge reason for the Ducks' success. So a lot of it, we were on the mark there. I think kind of the only thing that we talked about in the beginning, Eddie, is we thought Gibson might be gone at the trade deadline, and he wasn't. So that was probably one of the ones that we swung on miss on. But I do want to keep an eye on Gibson because of the injuries and stuff that he had. Again, he got hurt in that game against Calgary. Kind of screwed me in my fantasy hockey. You ended up winning. I know you talked about Lacombe. You won again, or at least this time cleanly in our league. But that's another part that we'll kind of go into that too here in a sec. But what did you think as far as like how our predictions? We were pretty close on most of these, and I think it was a positive. I think we have a balanced scoring. We have a number one goalie. We did do better in the standings. Obviously there's still those underlying issues, which we've talked about. The 5-on-5 play and the special teams and stuff is still not good. But there are some good takeaways this season. I think the Ducks did take a step in the right direction. It's just trying to take bigger steps in the right direction is the way I look at it, Eddie.
Yeah, I think I mentioned too, now that I can remember, I thought Cutter was going to be the top 3 for the Calder finalists. They haven't been announced yet, but just looking at the company he has with Dustin Wolf, with Lane Hudson, he really tore it up. Obviously, Salabrini. Players like that, I think he's going to be cut short. I think he'll still make top 5 in the running for it, but I don't think. But I had that prediction too. But yeah, I think most of these were yours, Mike, and you were pretty spot on, and I agreed with you on the show about how these predictions would go. Dostal really stepped up. And he proved that he can be a number one goalie. He proved he can stand on his head and he can steal games. Even when Gibson wasn't hurt and came back, he was still getting multiple starts over Gibson. It came to the point, too, during the season, Gibson said he would accept a trade, and he mentioned it was like Edmonton and Carolina he would. And he wanted to be a number one goalie wherever he went. He wanted to be that number one. So I think at this point in his career and all these rumors and him even saying that, it might be a point this summer where he just goes and publicly asks for a trade. Like it's not working out. Obviously, it seems like Dostal will run with the net again and get the majority of the starts. And it seems like Gibson's kind of slowly getting to that backup role, especially with the injury the injury occurrences that keep happening. Which, when he's healthy, they shouldn't keep bringing it up. But I know that's going to be a concern for a lot of teams. But you know what? Maybe when you're on a different team, you don't have to work as hard. You don't have to sit there and make those 40, 45 saves a night every single time. It gets tiring. You could bend the wrong way. I don't know. Look at Mackenzie Blackwood and how much success he's having with the Colorado Avalanche. He was doing really decent and well with the San Jose Sharks. He gets to the Avalanche, has a way better team in front of him. I think he was probably one of the top 5 goalies in the league at one point. Moving forward after that trade and what he did and how he's playing, how that extension that he earned. He's actually playing tonight his first playoff game. It's kind of hard to believe, but I remember he had the issues in New Jersey. He goes to San Jose. Everyone thought he was going to be done when he got sent down from New Jersey, but he kind of revived his career. I think that's something that Gibson needs to change his scenery, to let them know that he's their number one goalie, and they're going to look forward to him and have some more defensive support and kind of be on a winning culture and a winning team that knows they're going to make the playoffs. A team like Edmonton, each and every season they're going to make the playoffs with the roster they have. Defensively, are they that better than the Ducks? I don't think so. I think they collapse a lot defensively. Carolina Hurricanes, I think, would be a better fit for him. They have a better structure on defense, and I think he would thrive over there. I think he would really have he'd really have a kick-ass time and kind of get away from Anaheim, have a chance for them to win, be reunited with Freddie Anderson again. But they can send Freddie Anderson back over here to us. We'd take him as a backup goalie. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know. I think it comes to the point where you have to get rid of Gibson. Like, stop this whole song and dance. You have a number one goalie. You don't need to be paying a kind of a glorified backup goalie $6.4 million just to kind of be your starting goalie. Dostal is going to command a lot of money. He's probably going to command, I want to say, over $5 million on his next contract, and he damn well deserves that. So you're going to pay two goalies about $12 million, $13 million. It doesn't make sense at all. If he keeps Gibson, Gibson stays, I think it's just a really mismanagement on Verbeek's part because it's just unnecessary to do right now.
Yeah, and we talked about in the last show about Gibson being injured and the Ducks shutting him down. The Ducks did end up doing that after that game against Calgary, and then you had Husso in the mix for a while. And we had fan questions about that too. We had Rhythm Master Mover Shaker on Instagram, ask about Gibson's value this off season. And I think the value isn't quite as good. I mean, he still did well this season. He, like we talked about, had the goals saved against expected up, over 11.71. But the thing is that he can't play all these games. He's been getting hurt. He was hurt a couple different times this season. We actually talked about it last season where we thought he was off. Then remember he had the appendix issue that was taken care of. So now you kind of wonder what it is. They just said, he had a lower body injury. You don't know 100% what it is. So to me, his value is less. And I know, Eddie, you were one of the big proponents of saying that we should have traded him a couple seasons ago. You said that on the show numerous times, and they have not done that. And Verbeek even mentioned at this trade deadline that he was getting calls on Gibson. So I'm curious to see, what's going to happen there with the Gibson situation, the goalie situation. We'll kind of dive into the cap and all that and how that plays out because the Ducks have these RFAs and things that they'll figure out, and we'll get to that in a minute. But the other part of that too is we had, and I know people hate to hear it, but we had the Zegras rumors too. And some of the comments from Verbeek on his discussion with the firing of Cronin, he was specifically asked about Trouba and Zegras, and he didn't really give an answer. It was kind of the theme of the day with these interviews. But when talking about Trouba and Zegras, he was talking about how you look at the season and see how they do, and there's a lot of things that are going to basically be going on with this team. And I don't know, me reading between the lines, it means that Zegras is he's going to still take phone calls on Zegras, and we've said that high profile players, GMs talk to each other. There's always phone calls on big name players. It's just a question of whether or not they're going to take action. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear this and whatnot, and maybe it's changed. Maybe it's changed a little bit now that we're going to have another coach coming in. Maybe that has changed. Maybe there won't be anything. But you did have Elliot Friedman had talked about how Zegras was almost traded to Montreal back at the draft last summer. And it looked like you had Marco Normanton that reported that Montreal's 21st pick and Logan Maloff was going to go for Zegras and possibly a Ducks second round pick. And then there were other reports that did not include the second round pick, but a lot of it also factored in with Demidov, which I thought was interesting too, because they weren't sure if they were going to get him at 5th, and then whether or not the Ducks would go and be willing to trade Zegras to them because they were looking to pick up a forward to help their team. So I don't know. I just felt those comments. I can't remember which person in the media asked Verbeek, but he kind of dodged that question with Trouba and Zegras and kind of left it as like, we're always looking at things and analyzing things and stuff like that. So that's another part of this I want to look at. And I know people get sick of hearing the Gibson and Zegras rumors, but the comments that Verbeek made about it did not make me like, Zegras is great and all this other stuff. Now he did at the Ducks migration really praise Zegras, so we talked about that. He really thought he improved his two-way game, thought he was more, responsible in all zones of the game. Got in fights and all this other stuff, all these things that he did. So he was very, very high on Zegras then. And then in this last time, though, he just kind of dodged that question. So it makes me sound like he's really trying to explore all these opportunities, because he's saying that there's a whole lot that's going to go on this summer. So whether you like it or not, these rumors are going to continue until he assigns a big extension, and he's got another year left. So that's another one to watch. I know some of you hate it when we talk about it, but I mean, we kind of have to talk about it because you had this report come out, even though it was months later, but Elliot Freeman resurfaced it and whatnot. So there was the potential of him being traded back then, and it seems like he made a lot of strides under Cronin, but I'm really curious under the new coach, how is it going to figure out? Is this new coach, whoever it is, going to let him play center more like we said he should and be more of an offensive weapon, or try to look at him being this more complete, player in all the zones, or all the above? I don't know. It's kind of interesting now with this whole coaching situation. I don't know. There's just a lot of unknowns for me, Eddie. So I'm very, very curious to see like what kind of personnel moves will happen during the summer.
John Tortorella to the Ducks. Hearing that right now. No. Yeah, right. Everyone will lose their mind. I don't think that would have been enough to get Zegras. I know Zegras has been dealing with the injury issues for the last 2 seasons, and his point production hasn't been there. But if you look at everything else besides him putting up numbers, he did really have a more of a complete two-way game. He brought some kind of nastiness and physicality, too, in the role that he played. You saw him going out and sticking up for teammates, sticking up for himself. He's not the biggest guy out there, but he did. We did see him take some dumb penalties, get suspended. But you know what? I like that. I mentioned the Ducks are, aside from Buffalo Sabres, the Ducks are the softest team on the ice. You're playing a men's competitive, hard-hitting sport. You can't be soft. You can't be soft as cotton. So you have to actually step up and do something. And I'm glad that Zegras did. Not saying I want Zegras to go out there and start throwing fists and risking more injury, but I think come next season, especially his contract will be up after next season, taking the tools he learned this season, making some tweaks in the summer, I think he's going to have a breakout season. I think he's going to have I think he'll be, I'm going to say top 3 in the Ducks in points. I think he'll be really up there. I think his game will kind of just evolve and change. He's getting, they're getting older. He's still a kid too, so he's going to grow into his body, fill out his frame a little more, and I think he'll be good. But that trade with Montreal would have been horrible, and I don't think it should have happened. You don't want a trade like that happening, and then everyone's laughing at you when Zegras puts up 100 points, and they got him for just pennies to the dollar. Like, no, you have to be really cutthroat on these. But then on the flip side of that, Mike, Verbeek does want to get this team better. He mentioned too he wants to add scoring. I think last time he wanted a top 6 offensive player. You can't get that during free agency when you play in California. It's hard. The Kings are a good team, and they were going to be a good team last season. They had issues signing free agents. They had issues at the trade deadline as well, bringing in players that we're going to trade for and re-sign. Teams don't want to play in California. That's just how expensive it is, the state tax. Shesterkin makes about $12.5 million in New York. He's only pulling about $9 million. Yeah, I'm saying only $9 million, but like $3.5 million of his money is going to state taxes. His agent fee, but still, that's a small percentage of that. But most of it's going to the state tax. If you come play over here in California, you're dealing with the state tax. You're dealing with the political climate, which everyone knows California is not the best at. Everyone's like at each other's throats. I wouldn't want to play her. I love the Ducks. But if it came down to it and I was going to sign a contract, California teams would not be in my wheelhouse at all. I would avoid them. I'd go to a team that has no state tax, like the Florida teams, a Dallas, a Nashville, even Vegas. Like those teams are going to have no state tax or kind of give you a kind of a tax break and not really just tax you up the ass. So I think with that being said, Verbeek's going to have to give up assets. And if you want to trade a player like Zegras, you better make sure you get a proven scorer, a top 6 scorer that can fill in a role and put up more than 20 goals to get that 30-goal score, 35-goal score. Now, if it went with Montreal and he said, hey, well, we're going to send you Cole Caulfield back, I'd be great. I think he had like consistent 60-plus point seasons the last 2 seasons. I believe he had almost 40 goals this season. A player like that, yeah, it seems one lopsided right now if the production Caulfield's doing, but Zegras has that ceiling to be that player or even better. So I want to see if we trade Zegras, to kind of bring something back that's going to benefit us and kind of have a bona fide proven goal scorer that's going to hit those 30-plus goals.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. If something does happen, and we're not saying it will, we've got this report and now it's out there and new coach and things may be different. Who knows? But I'm with you. If they would have done that Montreal deal, I wouldn't have been happy. So I'm with you. I'd rather them get somebody that they know is going to help this team. As you mentioned, Verbeek is trying to get a top 6 scorer. He talked about that. He wants the team to make the playoffs. He feels that they're getting closer there. So those are some of the things that I would consider. If he even is going to entertain that, which I don't know. With the things change now, we'll have to see how that all shakes out. And we'll dive in. We've got plenty of stuff to dive into with the team. And kind of the cap and some injury updates and things that are going to happen. Before we do that, I do want to pump up our little DraftKings sponsorship with the Hockey Podcast Network. Are you ready to win some real cash during the basketball playoffs? Check out Pick 6 for the DraftKings when it comes to basketball payouts. DraftKings Pick 6 posterizes the competition, including prize picks. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. You can download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code THPN. That's code THPN for new customers to play. $5 to get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-9-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus in age, and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 is not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.com, DraftKings.com/promos. All right, with that mouthful, I'm done.
Mic drop. I have a problem gambling. Every time I gamble, I lose. So that's a big. Well, in Vegas, I went a couple months ago. In Vegas, I won big at the tables, but for some reason, I've yet to win big on DraftKings. But I'm not an intense gambler, so like just when I'm in a state where I can gamble. When I go visit my mom in Arizona, I gamble a little bit. When I was in Denver for that first layover, I just threw some bets in, came back, like, okay, didn't pan out. But yeah, it's a good app. It's fun. I like it. I enjoy it. Just don't get too into it because you can blow all your money.
Yeah, and trying to figure out this team, as we said before the ad read, going into the summer, there's some things to consider. With the cap, also injuries with this team. So another thing that came up that was very interesting is about Gudas. There was a report out of Czech News by Robert Sara of Sport.cz who was talking about Gudas needing surgery in the summer, but didn't say what kind. And once that report came out, some people wrote some articles and things like that, including us. The Ducks denied the report and said that wasn't true. And so kind of polarizing with some people, the comments I've seen on social media, and we've had our takes on Gudas too, but some people thought he was playing hurt. Others thought, well, if what the Ducks are saying is true and he's not hurt, then his play just not as good because, we've seen moments where he's taken hits and put himself out of position and allowed the other team to score or get a good scoring chance. And, the only thing I can really point to is Elliot Friedman's report in the beginning of the season when he was doing that little tour and getting all the photos and things like that when they were getting ready to announce he was captain. They said that he had a hand injury and he had to use his offhand for this strength test that he was doing. So, maybe it never fully healed and it was a lingering issue and maybe Gudas was considering surgery, but this is another player that I want to keep an eye on because you have people now that are just not happy with Gudas and the way he played, and of course, as we said, Lacombe's the number one defenseman. It's not Gudas. I mean, Gudas wears a C, but in terms of the play on the ice, it's Lacombe. He's the number one guy in defense. So I'm very curious to see what's going to happen with Gudas. You have these other injuries too with Johnston and Fabry that were both out. Johnston since March 12th. Fabry, as I told you guys, I talked to him, had a broken bone in his left hand. He hadn't played since February 25th. And then poor McGinn jacked up his knee back in December 23rd. So I'm curious. Fabry and McGinn are UFAs. I don't see them coming back. Johnson is assigned for one more year. And then the Gudas situation, what are we going to do? I mean, is he going to have surgery? Is something going to happen? Is he really okay? I don't know. It's kind of interesting that report came out, but usually the international reports are pretty accurate, Eddie. When you get these reports out of like Sweden and Finland and Czech, and I mean, you got to translate them through Google Translate or something else, and they're not always 100% accurate. But he made a post on social media and he wrote an article saying the same thing. So I want to keep an eye on Gudas this summer and see what happens with him.
I think the whole thing too with these foreign reports, a lot of it gets lost in translation because you have to translate it. We've had reports from different teams where one person thinks they translate it correctly and it just goes the totally opposite way. I think with the whole Labushkin thing too, the words were taken out of context. Yeah, he did criticize Cronin, but I think that when it first came out, it was saying something more along like more kind of derogatory than what he was saying. So I think that kind of gets lost. If he does need surgery and the report was right, that's good for the Ducks to say no, he doesn't need surgery, because why would you announce that when he still wants to play and finish off the season? That wouldn't make sense at all, especially, I mean, you have guys that have grudges. Gudas plays hard. He plays with that kind of sandpaper. You don't want to just go and announce that, okay, yeah, he's going to have surgery on his hand and blah, blah, blah. Okay, now you just told everyone his weak spot. Everyone knows they can go and try to take a run at him. I don't know. There's some guys that are assholes and they'll play like that. So it makes sense for them not to do it. But on the flip side, if he did need surgery, why continue to play him for the rest of the season? You should have shut him down the last week of the season, let him go and do his thing. And there's no point to do that. But you never know, these hockey players are stubborn. Maybe he just wanted to finish out the season. He wants to lead by example and not just kind of just dip out when the team is bad. And we did have a lot of criticism for Gudas. And my thing is, I think he was just playing a different style of player than he was. Like the same style of play that kept you in the NHL and got you to where you are. He just didn't seem to play that style this season. I don't know if him having to see, he thought he had to play a different way. But no, we want you to just play your way and defend your team. Like, there's been numerous occasions where our goalie's been run into. Players have been slashed behind the plays. They've been punched. They've been elbowed and no call. Just like that thing, you have to go and do something. I was kind of happy when he went through his elbow at Corey Perry. We all know Perry's an agitator and AKA the Worm. But yeah, it looked bad than it was, and everyone flipped out. Mike, you got a lot of shit for reposting that. It was funny. Those Edmonton fans are just babies. They cry so much, but I think I want to see some of that. I want to get to that kind of dirtiness, that nastiness. You have to have teams wanting to hate to play against you. You think teams want to go play against Florida with all the little shitbags they have with Bennett, with Marchand, and with Tkachuk? Hell no. Like, you don't want to play against them. It's like a bitch to go over there in Florida, like, oh, I have to play these guys now. Now, if you go to Buffalo and Anaheim, like, oh, cool, we can just go ahead and take our skate off and stab one of these players, and they'll probably get a penalty for it, and we'll get rewarded. Like, come on, you have to do something. I hope whatever Gudas has surgery-wise or health or injury-wise, I hope he figures this out. But I really hope he reevaluates his game and comes back and just be Gudas. Don't try to be Captain Gudas. Just be Gudas, but understand and respect the C you have on your jersey. Get your teammates fired up. Call your teammates out when need be. Someone screws up, get in their face and tell them they screwed up. If someone get a good play, make sure you pump their tires and be a good leader on and off the ice. But once you're on the ice and someone pisses off one of your teammates, or throws some cheap shots, or a call's not going your way, go ahead and start making your voice known and making your presence on the ice known.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing we talked about too is we mentioned Cronin, and we said how he was a transitional coach until we got the guy that we wanted. Well, that's what we both felt about Gudas too. We felt like he's a transitional captain, because we had talked before about, like, hey, who's going to be the captain for the future long term? Who's it going to be? We don't see it as being Gudas. He's not signed long term. We felt like he was a more transition. So I don't know that the Ducks will change that next season, but I'm curious to see, are we going to have a McTavish or a Terry or someone like that be the next captain in the near future? So I'm curious for that. And yes, like you said, I hope the best for him health-wise, whether it's, it is a hand issue or it's something else, because the Ducks are, they're always traditionally pretty quiet about it until something has to, be discussed about a surgery or some major issue. So I hope that he is okay. And yeah, you were right. When I posted that hit on Perry, I got so much crap on X from Edmonton fans. It was hilarious. All I did was say Gudas with the little fist emoji, and I got so much hate I was just like, I just post highlights, folks. Like, and I even commented on there, said, I don't wish any ill will on Perry. I don't want him to get hurt, but it was just so funny that it's just funny that some stuff you post, you get like no reaction. Then you post something else, you get crazy reactions. It's just interesting. Yeah, and you're right, especially when it's Edmonton fans or certain other teams. But yeah, that's part of what I want to see this season. Like, well, what are the Ducks going to do? What are they going to figure out here? The other part of this equation is the blue line. The blue line is very, very log jammed again because we've talked about Lacombe being number one. You've got Gudas, you got Trouba, you've got Minty and Zellweger, Hellison's an RFA. But now you've got Ian Moore's in the mix. Luneau's had a fantastic season at the goals. He's in the mix. Solberg, he came over, played with the goals too. So, I mean, you're this blue line, I'm very, very curious to see how it, pans out, obviously barring trades or whatever in the summer. But, you're going to have some people competing for some spots because, I mean, Lacombe is in there no matter what. And obviously they're going to have Gudas and Trouba in there. So, but after that, I mean, who's going to get these other spots? It's going to be a tough battle, and it's a good thing. I mean, the Ducks have got this talent, on the blue line. I like what I'm seeing, and I'm really curious how it's going to shake out. I just hope we don't get into this rotating nonsense, which is what we've talked about ad nauseum as part of the reason why we think Cronin was out, the utilization of his players in the lineup. But I am very, again, looking at the positive, I'm very up and high on the blue line, Eddie, coming next season.
Yeah, it's going to have a great problem to have with these youngsters fighting for spots. But then again, like I mentioned too about the Zegras situation and going into free agency and making some trades, if you want to bring someone in to help your top six, you're gonna sacrifice someone. You have to trade someone. We had to trade Drysdale. That was kind of hard. He was projected a sixth overall pick. We had to trade. And to get Cutter, I think that was worth it. I think Cutter's going to work out. He has such an amazing and fast wrist shot. His shot's so fast, and he really tore it up at the second half of the season too. I think he's going to have a fantastic season next season. I don't think he's going to suffer from a sophomore slump. But you got to make things like that. We have Minty, Hallison, Zellweger. It's like any one of those can be gone. Especially we have Luneau played really well. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Even with Trouba, I don't think Trouba had that good of a season with the Ducks. I think something was off. Maybe a new team, maybe come next season he'll have a better season. But he wasn't playing like himself, too. He wasn't really being as physical as he was with New York. I don't know if they're considering a buyout for him. They have the cap space, especially with the cap going up and up. We have more than enough for that. That could be an option, too, and just have kind of roll with the youngsters. And I kind of think, too, I'm not sure how much influence that the coach has on players. If Verbeek goes and talks to the coach, like, what kind of player, what kind of style, or do they have any discussions about that? I know Verbeek, ultimately, he's going to make the call. It's his call, like his way or the highway, but I'm pretty sure there's some kind of discussion on moving forward and what they need. I mean, we have a surplus of defensemen, which is not a bad thing to have. I think unfortunately, if you want to get better in that top six, I don't really see the Ducks going out and triggering Sam Bennett or a Marner, which are the two hottest ones available, especially Marner coming off a 100-point season. I can't see him signing with the Ducks. Maybe kind of a contract, what they did similar to Frank Vetrano, but he's a young kid. I'm pretty sure he wants to get paid now and doesn't want to really wait for his money. You know how young kids, how we all are when we're young, Mike. We don't think about retirement or 401ks, but when you hit that age, when you start doing your 401k, you're like, damn, now I'm getting old. But yeah, I think that's an option too. The Ducks have a good problem on the blue line, so we have to wait and see. And if Verbeek's not just blowing smoke up our asses, and obviously I kind of believe him now because he made this abrupt move of just firing Cronin today out of nowhere and kind of shook the hockey or the Ducks world. So I think he'd be inclined to move someone, one of our top young prospect defensemen, to actually bring in some help on the offensive side and get some more scoring for the Ducks.
Yeah, and you touched on it too. That was one of the questions that we had on Instagram. We had Dizzy All Day asked, will the Ducks be serious for a top six winger? As you mentioned, Marner, and you got Ehlers as well in there, and maybe
Ehlers,
and maybe some others that are out there too. But that was just what he had asked, and I go, that's what I want to look at. And then you had Maverick 87 ask, will Anaheim be a desired destination for any free agents? And I think going to that, we've already harped on the taxes and all that kind of stuff in this situation out here. But if Verbeek's able to do another Vetrano type contract, maybe that's what he has to do to try and get one of those guys here, because you saw him try to go after Marchessault and Stamkos, and they went to Nashville. It didn't really work out for him this year. Maybe next year, but those are some questions that they're going to have to figure out. I think that they can do that, and a part of it is looking at the cap. You got to look at these RFAs and what are the Ducks going to do. I mentioned Hellison already, but you've got Dostal, McTavish, Nestorenko, Colangelo, Lundestrom, Leeson, and Washi. You got these guys that you got to figure out what you're going to do. A lot of them aren't going to command a lot of money besides Dostal and McTavish. Obviously, Dostal is going to command a lot, like you talked about earlier. I think at least $5 million. Verbeek has talked about doing bridge deals, so I don't know if he's going to push that with McTavish or not. But if you don't bring back Fabry, McGinn, Shillington, and Husso, the Ducks are looking at least $16 million in cap, and then of course the cap space is going up. It's probably be closer to $20 million. So they could still sign Dostal and McTavish and have a decent amount of room left to go out there and try and get somebody, if it is a free agent, instead of not trading. So the good thing is Verbeek does have options. He can, I think he's got to get this thing settled. He was asked about, some of these RFAs too, and talking about, he said he's already been talking to their agents. So that's good. He's trying to get those things, I think, worked out ahead of time, get those done. Like I said, with the two big ones, obviously Dostal and McTavish, and then he can work on these other ones, and that will kind of give him a ballpark figure of, hey, what am I going to do? Especially, like I said, if he doesn't bring back some of these other guys as well, and then figure it out from there. So I think there's a potential there to bring back people. It's just a question. What he's going to do, the goalie situation too. If Gibson gets moved, I mean, that's $6.4 million, as you brought up earlier, and then you have Husso, but Husso's at 4.75. I don't think that's someone you want to bring back at that amount, unless he'll come back at a lesser amount, or you start looking at the goals. And you look at Klang and Dansk and things like that and see if you want to bring those guys up. But there's just plenty of options, I guess, is just the way to sum this up in terms of what they want to do. And yes, the blue line is stacked. They could even try to trade one of those guys to bring in a top guy. So a very, very interesting summer it's going to be, I think, for the Ducks, Eddie, and what they're going to do.
Yeah, and that was a good question about if Anaheim will be a destination, because I mentioned the whole negative things, but you don't know if some free agents will see what Verbeek is doing, if he brings someone else in, what coach he hires. I think that's going to go a long way if he's going to attract some free agents, because if they have a coach that's coming into Anaheim, which a player that's going on free agency really loved playing for, that really rose their game, and he knows his coach can get the best out of the team and really push the team to be a Stanley Cup contender and win the Stanley Cup, that might attract them to come and sign with Anaheim. It all depends. There's a bunch of different factors. Speaking to Verbeek, speaking to his plans, I know during free agency he gets to talk to their agents, talk to the players. They can just go back and forth questions, and if he can really sell the Ducks and what he's trying to do, and they can see the big picture, I can see them selling it for that. I think that Marchessault and Stamkos probably had a little bit of regret in not signing in Anaheim after the shit show happened in Nashville, but you can't blame them. And you can even look at Nashville too. I don't know if they're going to keep Stamkos. Marchessault started getting a little hot at the second half of the season. He started molding in with the team. Stamkos still doesn't really seem like he was gelling well. He has his buddy Killorn here. Maybe that's an option. Come play with your buddy Killorn, make a trade for that. His value is low right now, but he can still be a dynamic scorer, and I think he can still put up 30 goals, even though at the age he's at. But yeah, I think, like I said, I think it all depends on what's going to happen with the coaching and who we bring in. I mean, if we bring in Tortorella, then we're not going to get a lot of players wanting to come. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. And I hope Verbeek really utilizes what he did with Vetrano's contract. I think that's going to attract a lot of free agents too. But as far as go ahead, Mike.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I want to touch on the RFAs too. Once you get past Dostal and McTavish, I think it's going to kind of be an easy way from there. I think a good comparison too from Dostal would be Mackenzie Blackwood getting the $5.5 million. I think they're kind of similar at the similar situation of playing on a bad team. When he was playing on San Jose, he got traded. to a better team and he started thriving, I think that 5.5 can really do it. I think that's kind of the price I would put at Dostal right now. I think 5.5 would be fair. Maybe I want to say 4 years. I think that'd be a fair contract for him. McTavish is gonna be a little bit harder, but I think, like you said, might be a bridge deal. And as far as our other UFAs that coming up, Fabry, I feel bad for him dealing with injury since getting drafted for St. Louis. So I wish him all the best, but I can't see any of them coming back. Kuso didn't play bad, especially that last game. He was stellar, but you're not going to bring him back for anything more than $1 million. That's my opinion. So if he wants to stay in Anaheim, you're going to sign that league minimum or $1 million, maybe 1.5 to see if he can be a quality backup. But I think other than that, there's still goalies on the market that are looking for homes that we can bring in at a cheaper option that can be a decent backup. Georgiev comes to mind. He was a great backup in New York. He just wasn't a starter. He wasn't a starter in Colorado. He wasn't a starter in San Jose. But I think if you just lessen the workload and put him in a backup role, I think he could be a decent backup goalie for the Ducks.
Yeah, I'm with you too, and that's what I'm really curious to see. If, they pay Dostal whatever they're going to do because they need to do that. If they are able to move Gibson in the summer, and then try to go out and get someone that they can add, unless, like you said, Husso comes back at a low amount. And then part of this too, and this is kind of goes to our last segment of the show, is who we think is going to win in the playoffs and all that. But once the dust settles after the playoffs, right, that usually the beginning of June, we'll have to see what other players are available, and maybe now even coaches too, because Verbeek said he's going to do a big wide search, and now we have to see. Sometimes teams get eliminated right away in the first round, and GMs are like, screw this, you're out. So there could be some of that. We've touched on other coaches. There could be coaches available from teams like Nashville and other teams where things didn't quite go the way that they wanted, and we saw Laviette get booted shortly after Cronin did. So there could be some more on the horizon there too. In the playoffs. But what are your thoughts on the playoffs? I know Winnipeg won their first game against St. Louis. St. Louis was one that I look at to be dangerous. I look at your Avs that I believe they're up right now, playing in their game. Dallas is dangerous too. You've got the Kings in Edmonton. I think that's going to be a good battle. Of course, Vegas, who a lot of you don't like, they're playing Minnesota, who I think got lucky in that game against the Ducks. I think Vetrano was tripped, and there was a missed call there. Didn't really matter too much, but Fleury's going to get to see one of his old teams there. So I think the West is going to be pretty crazy, how that's all going to pan out. And then, of course, in the East, you've got the Florida teams in there again. You got Washington up in there in the mix. I'm really excited. We're doing our playoff brackets too. So if you go to the NHL website for the bracket challenge, just type in Ducks and Pucks. There's the league in there. Join it. We'll get the top 3 will win stuff as we usually do. But any favorites to win in the playoffs, Eddie, or anybody you see that may get knocked out, and maybe the Ducks go after some players or something?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the East. I think it's safe to say that Washington will knock out Montreal and Carolina will knock out New Jersey. I think Montreal was one of those teams that got lucky. They clinched the spot with their win against Carolina to get into the playoffs. I was hoping that the Columbus Blue Jackets got in. They've been one of those kind of bottom feeder teams, not really a place that free agents want to go. But with the whole Johnny Gaudreau thing and just how much their fans have stood by their team, it would have been cool to see them make the playoffs. And you never know, because last time they were in the playoffs, they swept Tampa Bay Lightning. So that was kind of interesting and crazy to see. But yeah, I don't think that they can take Washington. Washington's hot. They might cool off a little bit, but I can't see that happening. As far as New Jersey, they just have too many injuries. The Florida and Tampa Bay one, the Panthers and Tampa Bay one, that's going to be a good one. I think the physicality will edge Tampa Bay out. It'll kind of outdo their star power. As you can say, if you keep throwing body and kind of getting into the head of Kucherov, that can go a long way. I think the Senators, especially with Brady Tkachuk, he comes back, a nice healthy Tkachuk, and what they were able to do, and their goaltending has been stellar when he was coming in there. When Allmark was on his game, I think the Boston Bruins kind of regret trading Allmark, and now they wish they would have just kept him and traded Swayman after the atrocious season they had. But I can't see the Toronto Maple Leafs getting past that first round, and that's what you goes to say too, Mike. If the Leafs don't get past this first round again, their whole fandom is just going to break down, and they might have to break up that core four. Marner's already might go to free agency. They haven't offered him a contract. He might be a UFA. But then you have the other players that they might think about trading too. Nylander, maybe trade him and bring some new blood in. You never know what a mental breakdown these teams can have. They can just get upset and fire Coach Berube, and he's available now. We've seen what he did with the bottom feeder St. Louis Blues, and he turned them into a Stanley Cup contending team. So things like that are a factor. You want to mention anything about the East before I go to the West, Mike?
No, I'm with you too. Toronto's an interesting one. You're right. They got such a high payroll and some big names on there. And if Ottawa, dispatches them in the first round, especially by, I don't know that they'll beat them in 4 or 5 games. But I mean, if something like that did happen, you're right. I could see something kind of crazy happen with that, and what'll happen. And then, I am with you on the other ones. Washington and Carolina. Of course, Washington. Ovi beating Gretzky's record was a great moment from this last season. And I think there's some motivation there, for them to keep on going and do what they're doing, and Carolina up in the mix. Tampa Bay, Florida, probably, I don't know, that one's kind of maybe more the closer matchup than most of these other games. But yeah, I feel like the team that's going to come out, I feel like it's going to be the winner of Carolina, Washington. That'll probably be the one that comes out in the East.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. And you know what? I wouldn't mind seeing the Senators win the Stanley Cup if it wasn't the Avalanche. They've been one of those teams. I don't know. When I was a kid, I always liked the Senators because their logo too. So I like that, and I do like Brady Tkachuk as a player. But yeah, so I wouldn't mind that. As far as going to the West now, obviously I want the Kings to outbeat Edmonton because I can't stand their fans. And then number 2, if Colorado beats Dallas and they play the Kings, I can go to Staples or whatever it's called, Crypto Arena now, and I can watch the Avalanche play. So that'd be pretty fun to see. I don't think Minnesota has a chance against Vegas. I think Minnesota kind of died down, and like you said, they got lucky too, beating the Ducks, and they actually got lucky getting into the playoffs. And I wasn't mad that Minnesota beat the Ducks because it was Fleury's last regular season home game. So it's good to get a win, and it was really respectful for the Ducks to stay out there and show their respect to a goaltending legend that was drafted in the same draft as Getzlaf, and he was drafted first overall. So obviously, what a career he had, and I think he'll be in the Hall of Fame, no doubt in my mind. Everyone that listens to me, that I want the Avalanche to go ahead and go to the Stanley Cup final. I think they're going to beat Dallas, not just because I'm a fan of them, but Dallas has Heiskanen out, that's their top defenseman. They have Robertson out. That I don't know why the coach played him in those final meaningless games. But he gets injured, and he's considered week to week, and that's a huge loss. But especially both of them, it's going to be hard to kind of get past the Avalanche when they went up and got these depth players like Nilsson and Coyle that's been playing really lights out, and they've been finding their groove with the team. I think Colorado just is too deep of a team. I think the only factor would be if Ottinger stands on his head and steals games. I know Winnipeg just took the St. Louis game today. They were actually tied, and then the St. Louis Blues just had a breakdown. But I still have the St. Louis Blues over the Winnipeg Jets. I don't know why. I think they were just starting off too hot, and it's going to be a goaltending battle. I think we all know Hellebuck and what he's done. I think he's a Vezina goalie this year. I think he has it locked the way he's played. But then he had Binnington. Binnington has been killing it after 4 Nations. He helped his team win. I think it's going to be a good battle. I think it's going to be a good series. I think that one might go to 6 or 7, but I think it's going to be St. Louis over Winnipeg.
Yeah, that one's interesting too because you talk about Dallas playing their players. The Ducks' last game of the season was against the Jets, and I thought that the Jets were going to just rest their players because they locked down the number 1 seed. And no, they put on everybody out there. They put Hellebuck out there and all that. The Ducks ended up losing that one in overtime, just like the Minnesota one. And I was really kind of surprised because, like you said, you play that last meaningless game against the Ducks and someone gets hurt or something crazy happens. I was kind of shocked. So I'm curious to see how that pans out for them. But yeah, I'm looking at Colorado to go pretty far, and I'm looking at Vegas to go pretty far. It's kind of where I'm looking at. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. It's always good to watch, playoff hockey. I mean, yes, the Ducks aren't in it, which is unfortunate, but it's always a fun time. The mid-April into April through the beginning of June is always a great time. And like you said, yeah, if depending on how some of these games play out, may go to LA to watch whoever plays the Kings. or maybe go to Vegas and whatnot. I've seen a few games out there as well. So those are obviously the two closest driving distance for us. That if I'm able to go, I'd want to go check them out. So very, very, interesting to see how this pans out. I think it's going to be competitive and super fun. Checking out the playoffs, even though of course the Ducks aren't in it, and with them we'll watch what the Ducks are going to do. But I guess the only other real thing to close out too that was kind of interesting is Eddie, I've been going to Duck games for 31 years, and I ended up actually winning jersey off the back for the first time. Actually, I've never won anything on fan appreciation, not even like a Chick-fil-A free chicken sandwich or anything. So I was really happy about that, and it was crazy because two of my coworkers also won. Another pretty close coworker won a jersey off the back, and then another coworker won the actual car. So it's kind of crazy. A lot of people from my work ended up winning on that last day, the home game, the last home game that is. But it was pretty cool. It was a pretty surreal moment. Going out there on the ice, I got Strome's jersey, super nice. He's pro first responder. He'll repost things on there, and he was almost kind of like apologetic, I guess. He was just like, we came up short this year and we didn't make the playoffs, but we're really going to push next year. And I was like, I'm good, man. I'm like, I'm not happy we didn't make it, but I mean, yeah, I get it. It is what it is. But I could see there was a little bit of frustration in his voice, I guess, with the way that they finished the season, and maybe the way that they finished the season is part of the thing that hurt Cronin too. The Ducks kind of flopped that last week of the season, especially in some of these games where they did play teams that rested their players and they still lost. So that could have been a factor. But yeah, I mean that was a fun part to end the regular season games on, Eddie. I had no idea. JoJo had come by my section and had given away a bunch of other stuff, and I really didn't think I was going to win anything. And then he told me, he's like, "Have you ever won?" I'm like, "Oh no, I've never won that." He's like, "Oh, here you go." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "You have a coupon." I'm like, "Holy crap, dude!" So a very, very cool experience to end the regular season at home for the Ducks, even though they did lose.
Yeah, it couldn't have happened to a better person, Mike. You dedicate yourself to kind of just hockey and the Ducks, a great ambassador, and you kind of grow the game and grow the Ducks hockey and interact with fans and your giveaways, and you have a really good heart. You're a good person. So once I saw you won, it was the kind of the greatest thing, and it felt like I won a little bit. Like I said, it couldn't have happened to the best person to win. So I'm glad you won. I'm glad you got Strome too. He's a solid player for the Ducks, and you having the conversation and kind of knowing how he's kind of just not happy how the season went and stuff, and still has a support from the fans. So that was good. So congratulations to that, Mike. I was almost at that game with you. Maybe I could have just walked by one of the power players. They would have got one too. That would have been cool. Us both getting it at the same night. That would have been something epic. But I was over there being drunk in South Dakota, so having a good time over there. But yeah, hopefully next season I'll save up my money and do one of those outrageous bids and get one and kind of just steal that way. But yeah, well, congratulations again, Mike. I'm looking forward to seeing the jersey in person and looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with it. Either just kind of just let it hang or hang it up on the wall or get a frame for it. So that's going to be good to see you next time I come see you.
Yeah, the first thing I did is I tried to air it out from all the sweat. But yeah, I'll have to figure out if I'm going to frame it or whatnot. And one thing I did want to just address too is I know there were people that were not happy with Fan Appreciation Night because of the way the announcements went. So there was some stuff put out, and again, kind of like the parking situation, it should have been put out before, but a lot of the giveaways were done where people were in their seats. So like my coworker that won the jersey off the back, they just came to the seat and said, "Hey, you won," basically. And that was how a lot of it was done. And they were trying to capture photos and videos of player reactions, fan reactions of when they won stuff, as opposed to just kind of putting it on the Jumbotron and saying, "Hey, you won, come to, table whatever out of section 200, whatever." Because sometimes they put those up there and people don't come and win. But I think they could have done a little bit of a better job. I think their idea was good to like kind of come and surprise people and do that. But I also think they should have put more of that up on the board, because there wasn't really a whole lot of announcements up there. So it seemed like a lot of stuff wasn't given away when they actually did give away a lot of stuff. But you didn't know because, I mean, unless you were one of the people at your seat or you had Wild Wing or the power players come by you. So maybe they'll try and do it and just run it a little bit better. But I understand why some people were frustrated. They just didn't really announce it as much. And so the perception was, oh, okay, they're not giving away as many things. But I can tell you they did, because I was one of the winners, and but I didn't even know if they were going to do jersey off the back either, because there was really no announcement. I didn't even know they were doing that until JoJo asked me about it. And I was like, oh, I'm like, yeah, dude, very, very cool. So, little tweaks that they could have done a little bit better there. But looking, just kind of wrapping up the season in this show, and we're obviously going to have more shows and stuff like that. We'll find out more about Verbeek firing Cronin, what's going on with that, maybe some more updates on these injuries and trades and things like that. So, we may be more busy doing podcasts this summer than we have in the past before, Eddie.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to happen, especially we're going to be hearing in the upcoming few weeks, like, oh, Verbeek's going to be interviewing X, Y, and Z as a coaching thing. It gives us something to talk about. Like you said, though, I think it's going to be a busier offseason for us, especially in Ducks land of what they're going to do, kind of leading into the official offseason after the playoffs. So I'm looking forward to it, providing all the news and info and talking to everyone about it. So I just want to just end this too, on my part, saying thank you for all the following and all the listening throughout this season, all the interactions at the games, and just all the DMs, all the text messages and everything. You guys make this show. It's your show too, and you guys make Ducks and Pucks happen. So I just want to just sincerely thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for contributing with questions, and looking forward to doing a better job for you guys too next season.
Yeah, and I second all of that too. I want to thank everybody too. Been doing this. This was the, I guess, 11th season now I've been doing this. So it's been a crazy ride, as I said on some of my social media posts, and it's going to continue with all the stuff that's going on. But no, I really appreciate everybody's support. We do this for fun. This isn't, Eddie and I have our real jobs. This is a thing that we do on the side, but we love to do it because we're very passionate about hockey, and we're passionate about the Ducks, and we love sharing those experiences with you guys, and appreciate the support. And we'll be back with more coverage over the summer. Again, thanks everybody for the support, and let's go Ducks.